will Donald Trump unleash a global tariff war? This is the concern in several parts of the world, including here in India, possibly there in China. Mr. Liu, is that the fear the Chinese have? You mentioned earlier. You mentioned earlier in the program about China pushing for greater self-reliance, more technology. But listen into what Donald Trump said on reciprocal tariffs, and then and as well on BRICS. But listen in first to reciprocal tariffs.
Well, India's been to us just about the highest tariffed nation anywhere in the world. They've been very strong on tariffs, and I don't blame them necessarily, but it's a different way of doing business. It's very hard to sell into India because they have trade barriers, very strong tariffs. We are right now a reciprocal nation. We are going to, if it's India or if it's somebody else with low tariffs, we're going to have the same. We're going to have whatever India charges, we're charging them. Whatever another country charges, we're charging them. So it's called reciprocal, which I think is a very fair. So we are being reciprocal with India. Whatever India charges, we charge them. So frankly, it no longer matters to us that much what they charge.
Okay, let me first go to Mr. Chakravarti and then come to Mr. Liu, since India was specifically mentioned by Donald Trump on reciprocal tariffs. I'll come to you, Mr. Liu, in a moment. Mr. Chakravarti, a quick comment on that. Should India be worried? It appears that the Prime Minister was able to negotiate a deferral of some of these tariffs, but it's still very much there on the table.
Well, I think the crucial part of this is whether the reciprocal tariff that he's talking about will follow the what we call the MFN policy of the WTO. That is, if I raise the tariff on any product to whatever level, will it be applicable to all the countries? Because that is the MFN rule under WTO. Or is he saying that I won't accept that MFN clause at all and I'm walking out of the WTO as well?
But Trump is very capable of walking out. Trump is very capable, Mr. Chakravarti, if necessary, of setting his own rules even to WTO.
Well, I think then he'll have to do a reciprocal tariff on a country basis. That's what he wants. Because you raise the tariff, then it is applicable to all countries. That's a different thing. And I think this is where we do not know what exactly is going to happen. Because if it is reciprocal, then India will get hit by some of it. But I also feel that, the kind of exports we have and the kind of exports America has to India, so there's a good deal of what is between us, is services trade, which there's no tariff on that. But, so I think we'll have to see whether it is.
Yeah, but he's already, as we've seen, he's already put tariffs on steel and aluminium. We've got Indian steel and aluminium exporters complaining.
That is for all countries. That is for all countries.
Sure, it is all countries. But as I said, when Trump strikes, he seems to strike across the world. Let me bring in Mr. Liu. Mr. Liu, from a Chinese perspective, is Trump going to unleash a global tariff war, and where will China stand on that?
If you look at the tariffs on China, even though Trump initially touted 60% tariffs or even higher on China, but has now chosen to impose 10% for a start, compared with 25% on Canada and Mexico, Americans' closest neighbor and allies. So, and also, if you look at China's response, it's been carefully calibrated, not the kind of exactly tit for tat, but very well chosen to register the point that China doesn't believe in tariffs. But on the other hand, China's got used to these tariffs since Trump 1.0 and the Biden administration as well. As I said, China's now selling much more to the global south. And you will look at the global supply and value chain. Even though products marked made in India, made in Vietnam, made in Malaysia, they have China embedded in it in terms of components, in terms of raw materials, in terms of rare earths, and in terms of logistics. For example, the world's largest 7 container ports out of the top 11 are in China. So I think that China's now got used to tariffs in a way. But also, unlike the Biden administration, Trump wants more investments into the United States. And that's something Beijing may well agree to, because if you look at around the world, a lot of the manufacturing, for example, cars, are already, for example, China is now only a company in the United Kingdom producing their black taxis. The same thing could happen in the United States, and that would stabilize the relationship between the two.
That's interesting. That's interesting the way you're putting it. You know, Richard Russo, therefore, give us the big picture. When you hear these voices from China, when you hear these voices from India, there are both challenges and opportunities that are being seen in what Donald Trump is unleashing, especially when it comes to tariffs. How much of this is, you believe, bluster? How much of this is to just simply eventually strike good deals that he believes will benefit America? How should we see someone who every morning gets up with some new idea?
Yeah, I think there's three broad drivers behind tariffs, and everything we've talked about so far falls into the buckets, and you kind of hinted at what they are. You know, on one level, strategic issues where, you know, we feel that China has a lot of explicit and implicit subsidies to its manufacturers. American companies are not competitive, but also in areas of dual-use technology and such, where we're concerned about China's militaristic approach to its neighbors. We don't want China to have a stranglehold on the creation of significant technology. So, you know, you're going to see the United States using tariff and other industrial policy to try to, you know, for strategic reasons for countries like China to be competitive. The second is, as you hinted at, is a negotiating tactic. And that's where I see primarily with Mexico and Canada, with Mexico pushing tariffs as a way to bring Mexico to the table on border security, similar issues with Canada. But the third, and that's the biggest bucket, which is America's competitiveness with the rest of the world. And we're waiting for April. You had flashing up on screen, I think, some really terrific graphics that highlight, you know, the United States does pay higher tariffs to move our goods into other countries versus what those countries get here. So April is when that report's supposed to come out. And I suspect that while we had a relatively successful U.S.-India summit last week, we expect as well that India is going to get pretty hard when the April report comes out. You know, the question is, President Trump has said that bilateral trade agreements are on the table, including with India. Can we maybe work around some of those pain points by stuffing a lot of our trade goods baskets into what we're going to consider for a trade agreement? Hopefully get that first tranche done by the end of the year, as leaders have promised. But three big circles right now, different drivers for each. But I think the strategic and the overall competitiveness, those two buckets, I think there's going to be real concrete actions that aren't going to be rolled back by the end of the year.
That's very interesting, because it